Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to start on phase 3.
All right, so tell us, Mike, what's the goal of phase 3?
Goal of phase 3 is basically to develop your core muscles. We want to go ahead and make sure that the belly fat doesn't come back, and in order to do that, we actually build more muscles around your abs, but also around the obliques and your lower back, so this whole waistline area. The reason we want to do that is because areas that have more muscle actually carries less fat.
Yeah.
A good example of it would basically be, I got a good buddy of mine, name is Johnson, and he has one of the most ridiculously lean legs you have ever seen. Looks like one of those bodybuilders on stage, you know, probably 4% at his legs. But his upper body doesn't have as much muscle. It's still pretty muscular, but it doesn't have as much. And he's probably at about maybe 18 or 19% on his upper body. And he holds all the body fat there because he has more muscle in his legs than he does in his upper body. So the whole concept is, let's put more muscle on your abs and around your whole entire core area, so this way the fat doesn't come back. Because we want to go ahead and make sure that we do this one time and you can get that lean six-pack abs and be able to hold on to it for a very, very long time.
Yeah, and I think there's another really important secret to getting six-pack abs that a lot of guys don't know about. They don't know that if you build up muscle on an area, it's going to actually prevent fat from coming back. But yeah, you know, it's really key, and yeah, I think that's a big reason why phase 3 is so important, because first of all, you know, it really like shocks you out of that routine, and second of all, it really it prevents the belly fat from coming back and really gives you the muscular look in the six-pack abs that guys are looking for.
In phase 3, you're going to find that there's actually less diverse exercises. We're actually going to even more simpler exercises, but they're actually going to be a lot tougher. Because phase 3 is a pretty special phase. It's actually only 12 days. And it's also the shortest phase. The reason why is because phase 3 was actually meant to shock your muscles. So it's a two-part. We want to go ahead and build core muscles first, and at the same time, we're going to shock your muscles and basically get them going and get them ready for phase 4. You know, we were talking, and shocking muscles are very important because people hit plateaus all the time. In the gyms, everywhere you go, you see guys working out and you don't get any results, and you're doing the workouts right, but your muscles are just used to it. And so phase 3 also works as a shock. That's why it's only 12 days, because it's very intense.
Yeah, and I know, you know, this is definitely going to be a shock. I mean, basically, you know, over the course of the first few phases, you know, it was probably really hard at first, but you probably kind of built up a tolerance to the workout. So now they probably aren't seeming so hard, but this is going to be just like you're right back in the beginning of phase 1 again, and that's really what we're aiming for.
So you'll find that the exercises are going to be heavy, so your rep range is going to be a lot lower, but at the same time, you're going to start feeling your body's going to start going through a lot of different changes. And in phase 3, you'll see that on top of building your core muscles and on top of shocking your muscles, you're going to see even a higher significance in metabolism.
Yeah, and I know, yeah, like a lot of these like full body exercises that we'll be doing in phase 3. There is some direct ab exercises, like as you mentioned, but really, like, if you're doing like so much volume of these like really heavy compound exercises, you're gonna really feel in your abs. Like after you do these workouts, your abs should be sore after every workout.
Definitely, we're engaging a lot of core in pretty much every single exercise. Another thing for phase 3 is we're almost at the end to where we have to go into full implementation when it comes to the zero willpower eating system. So we're now up to the point where you have to eat 5 Tupperware meals. So the reason why we do that is because, remember, we've been taking steps. So we're almost there. We have to go ahead and make sure that it happens in this phase so you can be fully ready for phase 4, to where you go ahead and really shed those last pounds and really, you know, reveal your six-pack abs.
Great. Okay, so as you mentioned before, this is going to be 12 days of really intense, heavy shock training almost. Can you tell us again why you made it so intense and why you didn't include any rest days in the 12 days? Well,
basically, the reason why we want to go ahead and do it that way is because when you first start exercising, your muscles aren't really used to stimulation, it's not used to these exercises and the way to do them, so they're going to grow, they're going to change at a rapid rate. But as you go into phase 1 and phase 2 and you start finishing up those phases, your muscles are starting to adapt, you know, because that's how our bodies are built. Our bodies are built to adapt. And so it's in our nature. So what we want to do is we don't want to adapt. We want to keep change. We want to keep changing until we get to the figure that we want, you know, and have our dream body. So That's why we developed this phase here as a shock. So this way, it's almost like we go ahead and re-shock your muscles and get them re-going. This way your muscles are renewed, it's fresh, and it will be ready to absorb all the exercises and all the benefits that we have in phase 4. So phase 4 wouldn't be able to be very beneficial, wouldn't be very effective if phase 3 wasn't there to kind of re-shock the muscles and get them used to it. Yeah. If not, you would be just going through plateaus almost immediately.
Yeah, and this, I mean, you know, this is a very hard phase again, but you're going to see really, really massive results in these 12 days just because it's such intense training. But can you tell us why is it only 12 days? If it's such like massive results that guys are seeing in these 12 days, why is it that, you know, we don't just train this way permanently?
Well, because you're not going to rest in these next 12 days. So reason why, we want to make sure it's a shock, which means your muscles are not going to be used to it, even though you've been training for over 8 weeks now. Your muscles are still going to go ahead and really get affected by these exercises. So we took the rest days out, so you're just going to do 12 days. Now, your question, Dan, was basically why do we need to go ahead and do only 12? Why not just, you know, do it longer like the other phases? Well, the reason why is because if you go longer in a program like this, then you're going to overwork your muscles, because you got to think about the principle of building muscle. We break it down and we rebuild it. But in these next 12 days, we're doing a lot of breaking. We're breaking it on a daily basis. So even though you're going to sleep and you're going to eat right and you're going to recover, it's still pretty intense, to the point that if we go longer than 12 days, it's not going to be enough rest time. I mean, you're going to have to be able to rest. You're going to have to kind of start lightening the load, because like I said, this is very intense. And you'll see that when you start reading the workouts and start going through the reps, and you're like, wow, I got to go pretty heavy to do these reps. So very intense. We can't go too long on it, but 12 days will be just the perfect amount of time to shock your muscles, get them renewed, get them ready, and then you can go into phase 4. Yeah,
definitely. And another thing which we talked about before is like after a guy has completed all like 4 phases, and maybe later on in his training, if he encounters a plateau, could he use this phase again to get
Definitely. Up? This phase also is really good because, like Dan said, you can actually come back to this phase at any time after you finish this program. You'll find that, you know, people always hit plateaus, and so this phase was also designed to not only build core muscles and shock, but it was designed so you can use it over and over. Just remember that you only do this phase for about 12 days, and then you go back into a regular routine like phase 4 for you to continue, you know, for the rest of the time. But you can come back anytime though.
Great. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about building core muscle. How is core muscle built, and why are we doing it in this way?
Well, core muscles are built in a lot of different ways, but what is the most effective way is actually doing it to where it's indirect. And what I mean indirect, that means a good example would be if you're going to do a military press, to where you can either sit on the chair with a back support, and you grab the barbell right here and you lean back like this and you press up, right? Well, you're not engaging your core because there's back support. So you're literally just pretty much resting, and you're just using your shoulder muscles and your triceps. But in this phase, the same exercise is going to be done to where you're standing up off the chair, and you have to go ahead and not have a back support. And when you press the weight up, you'll realize that you have to actually tighten up your entire core area in order to do this exercise. If not, you'll feel like you're going to bend sideways, or you're going to bend back and forth. So it helps you really develop those core muscles right here. Yeah. So at the same time, it makes it a lot more intense, and there's a lot of safety precautions in doing these exercises. That's another thing we're going to cover in just a bit.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this is another really big key to building six-pack abs that a lot of guys don't know about, which is that, you know, the best exercises for building the six-pack abs are those heavy compound movements, because, you know, it forces you to develop a good core, or else, you know, you're going to tip over and, you know, you're not going to be able to do it.
Yeah, the core is your primary, it's how we move. If we didn't have core muscles, I mean, we would just be limp, you know, we would just be limp like cooked spaghetti. Yeah. So you got to make sure your core is really strong. But at the same time, of course, you know, the more muscles we have here, the less fat we have here.
Yeah. So. Okay, and let's also talk about, I know there are some direct ab exercises in this phase. How are the direct ab exercises in this phase different than the ones in the other phases?
Basically, it's going to be a little harder. They're a little heavier. And you'll find that in other phases, you'll be doing maybe different type of crunches or something to where it's almost more of a cardiovascular aspect. But in this phase, they're simpler and they're going to be very direct. And you'll notice that it's going to be a little harder. So you're actually you're not really using weight, but the angle that we're gonna do these exercises will be very, very direct, and you'll feel that it's a little more difficult. They're a little more difficult ab exercises, even though they're not really more complicated.
Yeah. And actually, one other point I want to touch on. Now, this is like, again, like a very hard 12 days. If someone wanted to kind of like shortcut this entire process, would you ever recommend they do this before doing phase 1 or phase 2?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And for a very, very good reason. This phase is designed to basically make sure that you're at a time to where your muscles are a little more developed, your muscles are used to working out and recovery, and at the same time you should have very, very perfect form by now. Very important, because this phase you're always engaging your core. So when you're using your core, if you don't do these exercises right, you're actually going to hurt your core. You're actually going to hurt your lower back. You're going to pull something, because these exercises are so labor intensive. Yeah. So I would definitely not recommend you skipping through phase 1 and 2 and coming straight to phase 3. If not, you might have a very big chance of getting hurt or getting injured.
Definitely. But you know, someone who has gone through phase 1 and phase 2 is going to have the base necessary to do phase 3.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's talk about the total body effect. What you guys expect in terms of their strength increases in phase 3?
Well, you increase significantly in strength because you're using multiple muscle groups at the same time. An example would be in this phase. Let's say a front squat press, to where you do a squat and you can hold on to a barbell here in front of you. So when you squat down and you come back up, you would press the barbell up. So in order to do an exercise like that, you have to be very strong in your legs to do the squat. You have to be very strong in your core to be able to hold the weight like this, because you may fall forward or you may fall back. And as you come up, you have to be very strong in your shoulders and your triceps to be able to press it up. Yeah. And then when you come back down, everything has to tighten again. So it basically works your entire body in one exercise. But that's why this phase is so much harder than some of the other phases, and that's also why you can't skip those other phases before coming here, because you're not going to be ready for these exercises. And again, we got to stress that these exercises have to be done with perfect form. Yeah, if not, it's a safety issue.
Yeah, and I think, you know, when guys are doing this, and if they complete all 12 days in the right way, after this phase, this is where you start to develop that really freakish functional strength. Yeah. You know, after doing things like this, I can do things like, for example, one day, you know, I was at a bar with my girlfriend, and you know, our feet were hurting, and she was wearing high heels. So we're about a quarter mile away from my house, so I just hoist her on my back and carry her back a quarter mile. And after doing phase 3, that is the type of thing that you're going to be able to do. You're going to have the functional strength, which is really, really going to improve.
Dan, you have like caveman strength.
Yeah, and this is where it comes from. It comes from, you know, doing that phase 3 type thing. Definitely. And when I hit a plateau, just, you know, shocking it out like that.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about the afterburn effect. Now, I know in phase 3, you know, phase 3 is going to be so intense that these guys are going to be pretty much continuously in afterburn. Can you tell them like how to make sure that they're getting that and why it's so important again?
Okay, well, let me remind you what afterburn is again. Afterburn is basically to where your body is going into recovery, your muscles are going into recovery, and it needs nutrients. So what it does is it's going to go ahead and burn all the food that you have in your stomach. Well, once the food is gone, it's going to take it from your energy storage, which is your fat. So you want to always be in afterburn if you could. So phase 3, you're going to feel the afterburn a lot because A, there's no rest times in phase 3. I'm sorry, no rest days. So you're on a continuous workload. So as something is recovering, something else is being worked. Yeah. So you're constantly, you know, in the afterburn effect. And that's going to be very, very, very good when it comes to burning the maximum amount of body fat. Yeah. So even though it's only 12 days, but they'll see a significant increase in the body fat percentage decreasing down, and also, like you said, with the strength. Yeah. Afterburn is going to be very, very significant in this phase compared to some of the other ones.
Yeah, and can you describe, like, in detail exactly how guys should feel throughout this phase, like what the desired feeling is after a workout?
Everybody feels a little bit different, but the general way that you'll feel is you're going to feel like your muscles are really full, they're really pumped, but at the same time they're sore. Now, they shouldn't be painful. So that means if you touch your muscles and if it hurts, then you're pretty much, your muscles aren't ready for this phase then. It should be the point to where, you know, it's sore, you can stretch out, and you feel like everything is always pumped. and you always feel like, like you just worked out, even though you worked on your chest, let's say 2 days ago, but it still feels really pumped and really full, and you should always be a little sore in pretty much almost the entire body. But it's just a little sore. If you feel, again, too sore or you feel that pain, then that means your body isn't ready for phase 3, and it has to go ahead and recover a little more, rest a little more, and get ready before going into this 12 days of training.
Yeah, and that was the biggest difference I noticed between phase 2 and phase 3. Whereas phase 2, I'd be like, oh, my chest is sore, or wow, like my shoulders are sore. In phase 3, it's like every single day, my entire body, is sore.
Yeah. So you're almost always in the afterburn effect.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the nutrition in phase 3. What's the major difference, and why are we doing it this way?
Well, the nutrition in phase 3, you have to start implementing the 5 meals. This is at the time to where if you don't, you're not going to be ready for phase 4, to where you're going to have that few pounds more that you have to take off. If you don't implement the 5 meals, it's not going to be enough of reduced in calories. So again, the zero willpower eating system was designed so this way you can consume the amount of food that you need, but at a lower calorie count. So you have to make sure that this is the time to go ahead and really implement those 5 meals and get you prepared to talk about social situations, liquid calories, and things like that get a little more trickier. So you definitely got to make sure that's implemented.
Yeah, and I have to say that, if you're doing these like really hard workouts, then you really gotta have high quality fuel. I mean, at this point, if you're doing workouts like this and you can do it, then you got the Ferrari, and you got to put Ferrari grade fuel in there, or else it's gonna sputter and you're not gonna be able to perform.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the pitfalls to watch out for in phase 3. What are some of the things that might trip guys up here?
Well, with the eating transition going into 5 meals from 3, I think that's one that's kind of tough for guys. Yeah. Again, just like we said in the other phases, if you're almost there and you're at 4 meals or maybe at 3 still, don't worry. This is just a stepping stone. Eventually, you need to get to 5, and hopefully, you can do it in this phase before this phase is over. But again, just remember, it's a constant progress. Just as long as you're constantly getting a little bit better, you're on the right track. One thing I need to stress, one of the biggest pitfalls in this stage is just making sure that they use good form.
Yeah.
A lot of guys, when they rush into this phase, they're going heavier, and the exercises are a little tougher, so they start using sloppy form. And I can't stress enough on how dangerous it is if you use sloppy form in this stage. I guarantee that if you do, you're just asking for an injury, and injuries are a very big setback. Keep the form slow and strict. Slow and controlled is always what I tell my guys when we're working out. Slow and controlled, so this way you limit the chances for injury.
Definitely. And what would you say if a guy, did make that mistake and did have some type of minor injury, say, doing a deadlift or something? What would your advice to him be?
You can go into the exercise vault, and you'll see all the exercises. Every single exercise in this program is demonstrated in there. We're gonna go. There's tips in there. There's proper form. There's good form and bad form. So this way you can kind of compare what you're doing or what you know versus what you see. So definitely go ahead and study through these exercises. One good advice, actually, if you'd like, just to make sure, is you can actually go ahead and study all these exercises before starting phase 3, just to make sure that all the techniques and all the perfect form is there before going.
Yeah, definitely. And one story I want to tell you guys is when I was doing exercises like this, years back, I can remember I injured my back during doing deadlifts one time. And it was just a minor injury. It was something which would have gone away in a few days if I had just rested it. But I made the mistake of having a little too much ego, and I kept deadlifting after I did it. I did 5 more sets of deadlifts, and of course doing that, it aggravated it, and I was out for a month. So if something like that happens to you, don't have ego about it. Just take a few days off and then restart. Don't aggravate it through doing more and put yourself out for longer than you have to be.
Definitely. I experienced something like that before too.
Yeah.
Form is so important, not just for safety, but also it is required for proper muscle development. Because if not, then what you're really doing is you're just working your joints.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people go through the motion, but they're not actually, stressing the muscle. They're just stressing their joints. So at the end, you're hurting your wrists, you're hurting your elbows, your shoulders, or your lower back. I've hurt my lower back before. Just like what Dan said, I actually didn't know how to deadlift years ago before, and same thing. hurt my back, and what I did is I took some time off, came back, and deadlifted wrong again. And it wasn't until somebody I met taught me how to deadlift the correct way, and I realized, wow, I started questioning all the other exercises I was doing, and years later I found out not all my exercises were correct. So I had to relearn a lot of things. So yeah, definitely take your ego out. Even if you've been exercising for a few years now, sometimes it feels like it's right, and maybe you haven't injured yourself, but if that's the case, you're not doing the exercise right, you're just kind of playing on that thin line, you know. And so always check your form and make sure that you're doing everything right and everything perfect for the safety reason and for proper muscle development.
Yeah, and those details of like the form are so important. Those tiny little details that you think don't matter, they really matter a lot. So I mean, if you have to go into that exercise vault and watch, you know, the form for the deadlift, you know, 5 or 10 times, and do it, because if that prevents an injury, it'll be, you know, worth its weight in gold.
Definitely, I agree.
Okay, so what are some of the other pitfalls and mistakes that guys commonly fall into in phase 3?
Well, talking about the form, something else that kind of goes with sloppy form is a lack of focus. Sometimes when you go into the gym, you can just you follow the workouts and you have other things on your mind and you're just kind of going through it. But in this phase, because you're lifting so heavy, because the rep range is so low, you have to be 100% focused. And that is going to show in your form. That's going to show also in the strength that you need. Because if you're not all there, you're not going to be able to really perform and give out that 100% that you need to, you know, to get these reps out and to be able to do these exercises to where you're using your whole body. So definitely have to be very, very focused.
Yeah, definitely. And I know like the mistake a lot of guys make is that, you know, in phase 2, obviously you still have to be focused, but it's a type of thing where if you were like talking to your friend a little bit or doing this and that, you could still get by with it. And in phase 3, doing this type of thing, this is a real serious workout program. You cannot get by with, you know, like talking to your friends while you're working out and like looking at the wall, and you have to be 100% focused on what you're doing, or else, you know, it's a real safety risk.
There's something I want to add, Dan. I think this is very important. During this phase, one key thing to always keep in mind is when you're doing the exercises, you want to keep your core tight. You want to always be flexing your abs. You want to always feel kind of like you're moving almost in like a robotic way. The reason why is because if you move in a robotic way, everything is stiff, everything is controlled. Yeah. But if you move in a loose way, then muscles are loose and they can get injured. So that's actually something I think is very important, and we need to make sure that y'all guys are doing that. Keep your abs really tight when you're doing these exercises, and pretty much every single exercise that you do, but very important when it comes to phase 3.
Definitely. That's one of the biggest things I noticed about your form versus, you know, a beginner's form, and say like the clean and press. Like your form, like everything is tight. It goes here straight up.
Right.
Everything is like a straight line, like robotic, like you said.
Right.
Whereas the beginner, it's like kind of coming up and like
you're leaning and your body's going out of natural alignment, and that's when injuries come.
Exactly. And if your form looks even a little bit like that, then, you know, lower the weight and study up on the form more. I know we're like really harping on this, but it's super, super important.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When you're looking at the rep range, you're going to find that the weights need to be pretty heavy, but if you're questioning your form, or if this is just your first time doing these exercises, you know, definitely lower the weight, increase the reps. You know, it's okay to kind of change it up once in a while, because it will be a lot safer that way. So you can actually start off by doing a test run, which is basically to where you look at the exercises, you make sure you know how to do all of them first. So you want to do them with very light weight, just to make sure the form is there before actually slapping on more weight and, you know, keeping the reps low.
Definitely. Okay, so those are some of the pitfalls, but what are the results that guys can expect if they successfully complete phase 3?
Significant increase in core strength and in abdominal muscles and the muscles around. Significant increase in overall just body strength because of the total body concept of doing these exercises. Your muscles are going to appear to be a lot fuller now, a lot harder because these exercises are done so heavy. So it makes your muscles more denser. And also you'll see that this is a very big shock to your metabolism. So what we talked about before about, you know, your body heating up, well, your body's going to be on fire now. So your metabolism is going to significantly increase during this phase. And again, it'll prep you for phase 4.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to stress again that, you know, this is a very, very serious workout, and this is a very hard phase. Make no mistake about it. But you're going to see some massive, massive results from this. You're going to see some big increases in strength and muscle size, big increases in the muscularity of your core, and really, like, you're almost there. Like, you are almost at the finish line. You're almost going to have your six-pack abs, and by now you should be seeing like significant ab definition. And then you realize you're going to put the, you know, the final touches on your six-pack abs in phase 4. And I just want to really encourage you to stick it through phase 3, because you're almost there. You're almost at your destination.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's review this real quick. What are some of the key points that guys should remember for phase 3?
Well, the key points to take away from this is, remember the goal to go ahead and build the core muscles, and also this is a shocking phase. And again, also remember that you can always come back to this phase at any time after you're done with the program. Because when you're done with the program, you're going to be repeating phase 4 over and over. That's what phase 4 was developed for, a long-term use. But anytime you feel like your body is plateauing, you can always do phase 3, go through 12 days of hardcore training and re-shock your body back into changing again and getting to that development again. Another thing to take away is definitely try to go ahead and do the zero willpower eating system at 5 meals. Very important, because you're almost at the end of the line, and like what Dan said, you know, you're at the point to where there's only a few pounds left and the abs are really starting to come out, so this is the time to really crank it up.
Yeah. And if you're ever having trouble in this phase and, you know, losing motivation, just go back to that vision board, go back to your goals, and really remember why you're doing all this, and realize that, you know, you are almost there, and don't stop, you know, 2 steps away from the finish line. Stick it through, and I promise you, it'll be worth it.
Definitely. So 12 days of training, it's hardcore. This is almost where you're at the phase 4. You're almost there, so keep training hard, and remember, keep looking at your vision board, have your goals set in mind, and we'll see you in the next phase.